How should we educate our children? This week's parasha is Parashat Pinchas, and we'll discuss exactly that. The beginning of this parsha technically belongs to last parsha. Last parsha, there's an act of defiance of God, an act of zealousy led by the head of the tribe of Shimon, Zimri ben Salu, and Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen from the tribe of Levi comes and attacks and kills him, and the plague ends, and the parsha ends. And then we start this week's parasha, Parashat Pinchas, and it says that God was rewarding Pinchas for this act of zealousy. So why that methodical break? Sfaradim, at least in some communities, continue reading another 3 psukim so it ends on a good note, not to end on that bad note. But an act of zealousy kind of needs to be put by itself so that we can judge, was it the right thing, was it the wrong thing? Parashat Pinchas is always by itself. Even though it technically sounds like it should connect with Parashat Balak, it's always put by itself for that reason. If you look in the Chumashim, you'll see that sometimes Chukat and Balak outside of Israel are connected. And Matot and Mas'ei sometimes are connected. But Pinchas is always by itself. Because that act of zealousy needs to be judged. It's a very, very strong act. And therefore, it needs to be judged separately. The same is done, by the way, with Moshe Rabbeinu. In his act of zealousy, when he breaks the luchot, when he breaks the 2 tablets, that parsha is always by itself. But the 2 before it and 2 after tend to come sometimes together. An interesting thing to put aside. But who are those 2 characters? Pinchas and Zimri ben Salu. So, going back to the end of the book of Bereshit, we have Yaakov sitting there with his children and telling them, giving them blessings or words of guidance in the end of his life. When he gets to Shimon and Levi, he tells them, he says, you guys, what you did in Shechem, you have this personality, a very zealous personality. When you get mad, I don't want to be associated with you. That's dangerous. And Shimon and Levi, although brothers, are growing up very, very differently from that point on. Levi goes and becomes the spiritual leader. He doesn't work as slaves in Egypt, right? He's separate from everyone else. Moshe and Aaron come from that family. When we leave Egypt, the whole thing with the Mishkan, who's going to work there, the religious leaders are all Levi. And Shimon kind of just gets assimilated inside later on the tribe of Yehudah, but at this point, he's kind of just on the back burner. And when you look at this, at where this comes up in this parsha, you see 2 people with the same personality. A very strong act of zealousy. Both of them have that personality, and one takes it to a place for God and one for a place of idol worshiping. Zimri ben Salu comes and does an act of idol worshiping and adultery in front of Moshe's tent, in front of Am Yisrael, to defy God. And Pinchas goes and kills him in the name of God. Both are zealous acts. And look how different they are one from another. Shlomo HaMelech says, Chanoch lenar al pi darko. Raise the kid according to his path. And the different commentaries discuss it. One of the big Hasidic rabbis, the Admor from Piasetzna, whose birthday was last week. He was killed in the Holocaust, but his actual birth date was last week on Wednesday, Yudalid B'Tammuz. He talks about this. He says, what is Al Pi Darko? Is it according to the kid's path or God's path? What is his path? He says it's both. You need to guide according to God's plan and God's way, but with the kid's personality in mind. You have this kid who's zealous. Make him a religious leader. Have him lead. Give him that purpose. This kid has a fire burning inside of him. Make sure this fire is a fire for Torah and not for Avodah Zarah. That this fire is a fire for building and not for destruction. Shabbat Shalom.